Hey there. Today we're going to learn how to make custom GPTs. So we'll jump right into it. If you are new to OpenAI and ChatGPT, go ahead and go to chat.openai.com, sign up for an account, and start playing with it. Today, though, we want to explore at the creation of a custom GPT that'll listen to your instructions. But then after that, we will look at more advanced options and ways for that GPT to communicate with the external world. So basically get information from external APIs like weather, stock pricing, and some other fun ones that I'll show you today. Let's dive right into it. And let's just go to the Explore button. And here you're going to see a couple of GPTs that are available already. So feel free to check them out. But we're going to go ahead and create one for ourselves. So we'll click on the Create GPT button. And then here you're going to see two different windows. The one on the left is to actually configure your GPT. And the one on the right is to preview how your GPT is going to look like. So we'll go ahead and click on the Configure button. And here you can enter, all the information that is relevant to your GPT. We'll create a GPT in this case that will do 3D art for us. So we'll call this GPT a 3D artist. Description will be 3D character creator. And then the instructions is what is going to make this GPT work exactly the way that you want. So we are going to say that you are a 3D artist that will assist people on the creation of neat 3D characters like the ones that you see on Pixar movies. You ask relevant questions that will help the user create a scene, then use DALI to create a 3D character matching the description from the user. So this is pretty straightforward. And then we can also have conversation starters. So we'll say, create a 3D character for me. And there are other options here, like custom knowledge, which we will cover in other courses. Web browsing, DALI, code interpreter, we'll leave everything on for now. And then the option for actions. Actions is actually what you use to communicate with the external world. And that is something that we'll cover in a later chapter. It's a little more advanced, but not too difficult if you follow along. So let's go ahead and test this custom GPT here. Let's go ahead and click on create a 3D character for me. Okay, so it says, well, great, I'll help you create a 3D character. What is the character type? Gender and age, appearance, clothing, accessories, personality, mood, setting. So we're going to just give all the information at once. I said that I want a dog that is a puppy wearing glasses very happy at the beach. So we'll go ahead and send that. And we'll just give it a second here while it's creating the image. And there you have it. So it created the image for you, and now we have a custom GPT. So let's go back to the create button. You can basically configure almost everything of this custom GPT just by talking to GPT. So we can say something like, create a cool logo for my 3D character creator. So if you do that, it'll automatically create and set a logo for your creator. And then also you can give all the instructions that you want for your GPT, all the instructions that we wrote in here. You can just actually write them right from here, from the GPT builder. Looks good. So we are going to say that this logo looks good. There you go. So now if you go to the configure tab, you will see that the application has the logo. And then we'll go right here to the save option. And there are three options, right? The first one is you can save this and share it with people that you want, or you can make it public so anyone in the future can actually access this GPT. So there it is. And now when you go back to ChatGPT, you will see that it shows right there on the left side. If you click on Explore, it will show us one of the applications that you created, basically. So now I can go inside of this 3D artist and do the same thing, just start interacting with it. Great. Okay, now let's say that you want to create a application that actually connects with the external world, right? How do you do that? For that, we usually rely on APIs or external applications like Zapier, and they provide access to data that ChatGPT does not have access to. So let's go ahead and create a very simple example. This will take less than 5 minutes, and we'll go through the process of configuring custom actions. And this is the part where a lot of people reached out to me saying that they were confused, they don't understand how to do it. What is an OpenAPI spec file? What is a Swagger file? So we'll go through all that and give you a quick example here. So let's say that we're going to make another application, and this is going to be called cute random doggy. So this is going to fetch a random picture of a dog from the internet and then show it right there in the chat. Okay, so the instructions, we'll wait for that and we'll get right back to it. But just to give you some ideas here, there's a website that I'll put on the description. There's a website here on GitHub called Public APIs. So it is github.com/public APIs/public APIs. And it's a collection of public APIs that you can access. It covers pretty much everything that you can think of. And then there's one API in particular that is called docs.ceo. And this API, all it does, it returns a random photo of a dog. So if I copy this link right here and I refresh it, it will return a random picture of a dog. So if I click on this dog, there it is. If I refresh it again, click on it, there it is. So that's all it does. It's just a random real photo of a doggy. Cool. So now how can we make ChatGPT connect to this API and then extract this information and then show it on the chat, right? Via code, it is not possible. ChatGPT does not have access to external world via Python. So we have to actually use the actions option. So we're going to go ahead and click on create new action. And you will see that it gives you a couple of different options. The first one is to import the schema from a URL. And what is the schema? The schema is basically the instructions for the API. How is that API configured? How can you communicate with it? There are some examples. For example, there is a weather.json example. This is what a JSON schema looks like. There is a pet store YAML example. So that's what that looks like. And this is where it gets very overwhelming because how am I supposed to edit this? How do I get this information? A lot of times APIs will offer OpenAPI spec files or Swagger files that you can copy and paste in ChatGPT, but they will not work out of the box because there are things that are missing there. Things such as operation IDs. Every path in an API should have operation IDs. So we're going to go ahead and just make all of this with ChatGPT instead of having to figure all this out ourselves. So we know that we have this API and we know that if we call that URL, it gets a picture of a dog, right? We have that information. So what we're going to tell ChatGPT is the following. And I'm going to copy and paste here my instruction that I had. So we're going to go to the Create tab and we're going to tell ChatGPT, create a Swagger spec file to use with your actions for this endpoint. This endpoint being that API endpoint that shows a random file. Make sure to include the server URL for the endpoint. The response looks like this. And then we're going to copy and paste the actual response that we get from the API. So we're telling ChatGPT, look, I need a spec file. I want to use this URL, this API that is free, I can just log into it. And this is, I'm going to copy the response and paste it in there. This is what the response looks like. Now create the spec file for me. So what ChatGPT is going to do, and for some reason it's not saving as an action automatically, you do have to copy the response here, but that is pretty easy. So what happens here is that ChatGPT is creating the spec file from you. It's giving it a title, is saying the server that it has to go to get that API path, and then it's describing the path and says, breeds image random, get a random image from a doc. We're going to give it an operation ID, and then it's kind of describing the content type, the schema, and everything else for us. So now we can actually copy this code. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it. We can go to configure again, go to create new action, and we're going to just paste that in there. And as you can see here, now all of a sudden we have available actions. The action is called get random doc image, and it tells the path that it's supposed to use. There's no authentication required here, but some APIs will require for you to provide an API token. If it's a paid API or an API that just requires you to have an account with them. So if you do have to use an API key, you just put it in here, and that's it. Now also they require a privacy policy URL where you can actually show the terms and conditions or the privacy policy of your particular action. So in this case, we're just going to copy this URL here and put it in there for now, since this is not going to be public. Now we'll go back to the creator, and we're going to give it some instructions. And we will say, pick a random photo from, and what is the name of it? We're going to go here. There you go. Okay, so pick a random photo from the operation get random doc image, and then display it to the user. Very simple. Conversation starters, random doc photo. Okay, so there it is. So now we're going to go ahead and click on random doc photo and see what happens. So when we click on this, you will see that we are in debugging mode because we are building this API. I mean this GPT. Basically what it's trying to do now is trying to call this API. It says, I'm trying to call this domain name, I'm trying to call this path. I'm calling the operation ID that you told me, which is get random doc image. And then it says, well, you have to allow this for us to communicate with it. So we're going to allow that. And now it's actually posting that question to the doc and getting a response. It says, here's a random doc photo for you. Enjoy this adorable Chihuahua. It actually knows what it is, which is kind of cute. And it probably knows because the response says that it's a Chihuahua right there. Okay, great. So now we have a working GPT that can communicate with the external world. So we'll say, show me another photo. Let's go in the API again. And there it is, another picture of a dog that is coming from an API. This is not generated by DALI or anything like that. This is a real photo that we're getting from that API. Great, so now we're going to go ahead and ask GPT to create a logo for us. Create a cool logo for this GPT and set it as a default. We'll give that a second. Okay, so it created a logo for us. It's called randoc image, which is very neat because it's a random doc, so it's called randoc now. We're gonna go to configure and we're gonna change the name. The name is randoc. There you go, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and publish this. I'm gonna make it only with people with a link, confirm. And there you have it. You have your custom GPT that is communicating with the external world. Now, I know we went really quick through it. For some people, this might be extremely easy, but for others, it's a completely new concept. So now we're going to create another one. And this one actually is going to use the API from a website called CoinDesk to get the latest Bitcoin price. And this is what the API for CoinDesk looks like. It is basically api.coindesk.com/v1 /bpi/current price.json. So this API endpoint will basically give you the latest price of Bitcoin in US dollars and in British pounds as well, and euro. So let's go ahead and create another custom GPT for that purpose. So we'll go to Explore. We'll click on Create a GPT, and let's try talking to it. So you are a helper. No, I'll just say something else. You provide live Bitcoin prices from an external API. So that create, yeah, I'll just say that for now. We'll let it update itself and just give us some defaults here. Now we can go to, now let's give your GPT a name. How about cryptocurrent? Yes, that works. And it's going to automatically create a profile picture as well. Okay, that works. So let's go to the configure tab, and you can see here that it did not set the name, but that happens sometimes. It has a description, and then it has some information here. I'm gonna save it for now. Okay, let me go back to edit it just to make sure. So let's look at the description. It says your ROS private Bitcoin prices as external APIs. You will use your browsing capability to fetch the latest Bitcoin prices from reliable financial websites. Okay, so we're gonna change this one. We don't want it to browse the internet. We actually want an API that will provide this information. Okay, so we know that we have this API endpoint from CoinDesk, and this is the response, and this is what it looks like. So we're going to go ahead and tell ChatGPT to create a Swagger schema for this, okay? And what we're going to do, first of all, is, let's see here, I'm gonna paste this in the chat. So we're going to tell ChatGPT to create a Swagger 3.0 spec file to use with your actions for this endpoint. Make sure to include the server URL. The response would look like this. And then we're going to go here and copy the entire response and paste it in there. Now, another thing that is the biggest problem with this process is that a lot of times ChatGPT will not include the operation ID, which is a required field on these files. The operation ID is not available in most open spec files. So we'll also put that instruction in there. Make sure to include operation ID. And this is going to give you a valid expect file, basically. So there it is, it's starting to create that for us. And as you can see here, we have the server, which is good. Usually doesn't do that unless you tell it to do so. And there we go, we have the operation ID as well. Great. So this is the full spec file and describes the entire schema of all the options that are available. So we're gonna go ahead and copy that. Click on the copy button. We're going to go to configure, go to, let me delete this one that I had here. We're going to go to configure, create new action, and we're going to paste this spec file right into it. And if we scroll down, you will see that now you have a new function called get current Bitcoin price. And it calls that endpoint. It requires no authentication. Like I said before, sometimes you might need API keys or authorization. In this case, we don't need that. And then it also needs a privacy URL. So we'll just put this GitHub URL there for now. We'll go back to the editor and we'll give this a try. So let's grab the actual name of the operation. So let's look at the instructions. Your role is to provide live Bitcoin prices by accessing external APIs. You'll use the get current Bitcoin price action available to get the data. And the reason why I'm using this is because I found out that if you have multiple endpoints, if you reference the operation ID of your API, you'll get better results. It will not get confused because a lot of times the endpoints might be very similar to each other. So we'll go ahead and give this a try. So what is the current price of Bitcoin? And it's going to ask us for permission to communicate with the external API. Always allow. And there you have it. As the most recent update, the price of Bitcoin is $36,363. Great. So hopefully, okay, great. So now we'll go back here and publish it. So we'll publish this application. We can click on the View GPT link. You can share this link with any friends and they will be able to play with it on their computers. I don't think it's enabled as of today on iOS devices, but at least you can use it on the computer. So here it is, another simple application that you created that fetches the prices of Bitcoin from an external API, and then it shows that right in the shed. Now, the next part of this guide is basically to teach you how can you set up your own API. And this is a topic that is a little more advanced, but I also had a few friends that asked me that question. They say, hey, Dan, well, it's really cool to use external APIs, but what if I want to do something more unique? What if I want to run code in a machine that does something that ChatGPT cannot do? What if I want to, for example, fetch data from other APIs and put it behind my domain name? So when I'm fetching information from my application, it doesn't say that it's getting information from Coindesk.com. It doesn't say that it's getting information from freeapi.com, right? You want to kind of personalize it. A lot of times the API responses that you get from other places are extremely large, so you have to clean that up a little bit and modify the data. So this is where the course becomes a lot more extensive and it will really teach you a couple of different things. Number one, how to set up a very simple API on your computer that you can run, and that will take about 10 to 15 minutes. Then after that, we want to expose the API to the external world. So there's an application that I will show you that will allow you to open that API so that it can be accessed from the internet. And with that, we can actually test a custom GPT to communicate with your API that you are running right there on your computer in that moment. That is like the first step, right, to kind of develop this. Then after that, you actually have to deploy that application to a server. And the reason why we're doing this is because you can do a lot of neat automations with Zapier, and we'll cover that in another chapter. Of course, you can send emails, you can post messages on Instagram, you can do all these things with Zapier. It's really cool. But what if you have this really good idea and nobody else has it? Or maybe you have a company that has this really cool data that no one else has, but you don't have an API. Well, with this, I'm going to basically show you how you can set up this API locally so you can play with it, and then send it to a production server. We'll create a very basic example in DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is a very affordable provider for applications. We'll configure a web server in there. We'll also configure your Node.js Express application. We'll configure the domain name and just glue it all together and have a custom API that will be api.yourdomainname.com, and that's what's going to show in here in the actual application. So this is the basic overview on how to create custom GPTs and also GPTs that communicate with the external world. See you in the next video where I'll go into deeper examples on how to set up your own APIs. See ya.